Okay, so the 2025 schedule prediction, well, not a prediction actually, because I'm going to do something different as far as the looking at the schedule goes, but the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers schedule is out, and in the past I just sat down here and I just went through game and gave a prediction. So I'm going to do something different this time around. Instead of just doing, oh, I think they're going to win this game. Oh, I don't have a good feeling about this game. No, I'm just going to look at the schedule as a whole and give you my thoughts on it. And maybe I'll give a ceiling and a floor for wins and losses as this goes. So this is me just reviewing the schedule, not going game by game and giving a prediction, if that makes any kind of sense. So let's get on to it. This is the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers schedule review. All right, so kicking things off, we got week 1, which is September 7th. We are at the New York Jets. Fun fact, this game's going to be on my wedding. So, yeah, my fiance, if you're watching this, just remember for future references, if you ever say how thoughtless and inconsiderate I am, I'm sacrificing a Steeler game for our wedding. So there you go. But anyway, Steelers and the Jets on September 7th for week 1 at MetLife. Kind of figured that we'd start off on a Sunday because, like, when was the last time that we didn't start on a Sunday? Probably like 2020 or something like that. But yeah, nothing extraordinary there. Obviously, probably the headline is going to be either Aaron Rodgers will be our quarterback for this game, which I am hoping that is not the case as I'm currently recording this on Friday, or we are playing Aaron Rodgers once again. So that's the storyline right there. Kind of figured that's what the NFL wanted all along. Then, week 2, September 14th, when I'm going to be down in Florida for my honeymoon. We are at home against the Seattle Seahawks for our home opener. DK Metcalf revenge game right here. Kind of similar to the first 2 weeks of last season, actually, where we started off against the Falcons, which was Arthur Smith going up against his former team. And then the very next week, we had Russell Wilson going up against his former team. Kind of similar here. We could have potentially Aaron Rodgers going up against his former team, and now we have DK Metcalf going up against his former team. So kind of similar for the first 2 weeks of this year and last year when you think about it. But we got the Seahawks in week 2. That's a 1 o'clock Eastern time game in Pittsburgh for the home opener. Week 3, September 21st, 1 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast. We head to dreaded Foxborough to take on the Patriots. Obviously, if they were still in their dynasty days, I would be serious with calling it dreaded Foxborough, but because the Patriots are one of the worst teams in the NFL now, I am using that more facetiously than seriously, but any Steeler fan knows that we do not have a good time playing in Foxborough, no matter how good or bad the Patriots are. Last time we've won there, 2008, when Tom Brady was not playing in that game. But yeah, we just do not have a good time playing in Foxborough. But you know, hopefully we come away with a win there. That's all I can say. But yeah, Steelers and Patriots in week 3. And then week 4, I am not a fan. This is the part of the schedule here that I am not a fan of. Okay, the first 3 weeks are fine, but here's the part of the schedule where I am not a fan of it at all. Week 4, we fly on to Ireland to take on the Minnesota Vikings. That's 9:30 in the morning here in the United States on the East Coast. So, on one hand, it is pretty cool to wake up to Steeler football, but on the other hand, you're flying overseas to Ireland, and that leads into the next week being our bye week, because teams that normally play in different countries have their bye week the following week. And wouldn't you know that the Steelers in week 5 have their bye week in week 5, which I am not a fan of. Absolutely do not like whatsoever. The bye week should be between weeks 7 through 9, in my opinion. Okay? So you missed the bye week by about 2 weeks right there. If it was a week 7 bye, I'd be perfectly fine. Week 8 or 9 is ideal for me. Week 6, I could maybe understand, but I still wouldn't like. Week 5, absolutely not. Hate it. Absolutely hate it. And keep in mind that the Steelers are technically the home team for the matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, okay? But the game is not in Pittsburgh. So basically, week 2 against the Seahawks is going to be our first official home game, and then we do not have an official home game in Pittsburgh for basically a month. Because after our bye week, we head on back to Pittsburgh to play the Cleveland Browns on October 12th, which is a 1 o'clock Eastern time game in Pittsburgh. So, kind of similar to last year where we didn't play a division rival until after our bye week. We kind of do the same thing with this year's schedule, only except we don't play the division 4 times in a row after the bye. That's literally the only difference in my opinion. But we got consecutive games against the division after the bye week, and this is our first official home game in Pittsburgh since week 2. I am not a fan of that whatsoever. I'm not. But thankfully, we always play the Browns well in Pittsburgh, and hopefully we can take advantage of that again right there. The Browns, by the way, are one of 3 teams in the NFL this season that do not have a primetime game. I believe it's them, the Saints, and the Titans are the only teams that do not have primetime games this season. So, yeah. Week 5 bye, don't like the game in Ireland, don't like the fact that we don't have an official home game for 4 weeks. Do not like that. And then we got a short week coming up. Week 7, we are on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals on October 16th, 8:15 kickoff time down in Cincinnati. Now, yes, we do play the Bengals well in Cincinnati historically. We have beaten the Bengals in Cincinnati the last 3 times we've gone there. Obviously, when Ben was the quarterback, we had a knack for beating the Bengals in Cincinnati. So, basically, nothing has changed. Bengals have beaten us twice in Cincinnati this decade, but overall, we generally do very well in Cincinnati, so that's my confidence for that right there. However, Mike Tomlin, even though he does have the non-losing seasons that no one cares about, even though he does have a good record against the AFC North, guess what he has a bad record against? He has a bad record playing AFC North teams on Thursday night games on the road. I can't even remember the last time the Steelers won a road AFC North game on a Thursday night. I can't remember. And I'm not going to sit down here and try to remember because the video would go on too long. But yeah, week 7 at the Bengals, Thursday nighter, short week, not a fan of. For the record, I was never a fan of Thursday games unless it was Thanksgiving. The NFL really needs to do something about that. Like, the first game of the season being on a Thursday where it's the Super Bowl champions opening up the season, that being on a Thursday, I'm fine with that. But other than that, they gotta either make Thursday games strictly on Thanksgiving, or at the very least, they gotta limit Thursday games. I was never a fan of Thursday games. It's a short week, and you have very little time to prepare. So there you go right there. Not a fan of that. Then week 8, we at least with that, we have kind of like a mini bye after that, because week 8, we return home, play the Packers on Sunday Night Football on October 26th, 8:20 kickoff time in Pittsburgh. Again, this is a Sunday night game. Yeah, I think the last time, no, I think 2017 when the Packers came to Pittsburgh, that was a Sunday night game too. So yeah, we get another Sunday night game against the Green Bay Packers. But yeah, at least we're coming home. At least we get to rest up a bit. At least it's kind of like a mini bye. So there you go with the Green Bay Packers right there. That's going to be a tough game. But, you know, we generally do well playing the Packers in Pittsburgh. Week 9, staying at home, taking on the Indianapolis Colts on November 2nd. Obviously, we have a history of doing well against the Colts, but the Colts have beaten us the last 2 times pretty handily, might I add. But this time it's in Pittsburgh. Hopefully the fortunes can turn, and we'll go from there. But yeah, Week 9 against the Indianapolis Colts. We'll see there. Week 10, we head on to Inglewood, taking on the Chargers. That's a Sunday night game as well. So yeah, we get 2 Sunday night games in 3 weeks. Not particularly in love with that, but at least it gives us time to rest up a bit. But then again, this is on the West Coast, so it's a 3-hour difference. But yeah, Week 10, we're at the Chargers. Sunday Night Football, November 9th. I anticipate a lot of Steeler fans being there because Inglewood doesn't really care about football. Inglewood is just not a good football market. They really should have stayed in San Diego. I've been saying that for almost a decade now. Week 11, we return home, taking on the Bengals. So we get both games against the Bengals done in about a month. So exactly a month, actually. October 16th and November 16th, we play the Bengals. So yeah, Week 11, we are at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. 1 o'clock kickoff time in Pittsburgh. Just a regular Sunday afternoon game. Nothing too special there. Week 12, at the Chicago Bears. That is November 23rd, 1 o'clock kickoff time in Chicago. Now, Chicago is another place where the Steelers do not play well. I believe the last time the Steelers won in Chicago was 1995. So yeah, we don't play against the Raiders well in their stadium, and we also don't play well against the Bears in Chicago. That screams trap game right there, especially considering the Bears just hired Ben Johnson as their new head coach. So, yeah, that's a pretty antsy game right there if you think about it. I think I may be wrong, but this may be the Sunday after Thanksgiving. I mean, it's Week 12. Usually Thanksgiving's around Week 12 or 13, so it'll either be the Sunday after Thanksgiving or the Sunday before Thanksgiving, but I need to look at the calendar. Point is, Week 12, we are at the Bears. Week 13, we return home taking on the Buffalo Bills. That is a 4:25 kickoff game in Pittsburgh. I assume this will be the CBS game of the week. Why this is the CBS game of the week, I have no idea, because it is a legitimate Super Bowl contender going up against a team that just does not belong in the playoffs, a team that is a playoff jobber, a once proud franchise that is now a playoff jobber. So I have no idea why this is a 4:25 kickoff game in Pittsburgh. It should just be a 1 o'clock kickoff game. Now, the next game, Week 14, December 7th, which is my 30th birthday, by the way, how fitting is it that we play the Baltimore Ravens on my birthday this year? How fitting is that? You want to make my birthday shitty? There you go, right there. You play the Ravens. Now, if you want to make this game a 4:25 game, I'm all for it, because I feel like a Steelers-Ravens game should, at the very least, get a late Sunday slot. Steelers-Ravens should always get at least one primetime game a year. So if you want to make this one the 4:25 game, I got no issue with that whatsoever. But there you go. You're at the Ravens. And this, by the way, this jumpstarts this Week 14 game. It jumpstarts 3 road games in the next 4 weeks. And 3 of our final 5 games are on the road. But 3 of the next 4 are on the road. So, yeah, it just shows you we've been home a lot so far. 8 days later, Monday Night Football. I was beginning to think when we were going to have a Monday night game. I know the NFL tries to get at least one team having at least one Monday night game a year. But December 15th, we are at home against the Miami Dolphins for Monday Night Football. 8:15 time in Pittsburgh. Yeah, when I think of Steelers-Dolphins playing on Monday night, I always think back to that 2007 game, the Mud Bowl game in Pittsburgh, where the Steelers won that game 3-0. Heinz Field was like soaked in mud, and it was all rainy that night. That's what I think of when I think of Steelers-Dolphins on Monday Night Football. Maybe it won't be like that again, but It's going to be in December, so maybe maybe it'll be an ice bowl instead of a mud bowl. But we'll see about that right there. But yeah, Steelers, Dolphins, Week 15 in Pittsburgh, Monday Night Football. Week 16 at the Detroit Lions. 4:25 kickoff game, December 21st in Detroit. I am just going to sit down here right now and say if there is one game that we are guaranteed to lose, it is this game right here. We are not beating the Lions. I mean, shit. The last time we played Detroit, we tied with them when they were winless going into that game in Pittsburgh, okay? Now the Lions are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. What makes you think if you can't beat the winless Lions in Pittsburgh, you tie with them? What makes you think you're going into Detroit and beating this Lions team that is a legitimate Super Bowl contender? Oh, here's the fun part. You're not. So yeah, a lot of these games are up in the air in my opinion, but like I said, if there's one game on this schedule that we are guaranteed to lose, it is this one. I have literally no faith in this one. As a matter of fact, I was kind of hoping that we'd start the season off playing the Lions on September 7th. That was the game that I was hoping that would be week 1. Because during my wedding, it'd be like, oh, well, I got nothing to worry about. The Steelers are playing the Lions. They're going to get their asses kicked, so I got no reason to watch that game anyway. But I really don't care about the Jets that much either, so I guess it kind of balances out. So there you go right there. Week 17. Staying on the road, we go to Cleveland to play the Browns. December 28th, 1 o'clock kickoff time in Cleveland. That might be another tough game right there because the Browns have beaten us in Cleveland a lot lately. Last time the Steelers won in Cleveland, get ready for this, you got to go back to 2021, when before we used to beat the Browns in Cleveland like it was nothing at all. As a matter of fact, we have only beaten the Browns twice in Cleveland since 2017 when the Browns went 0-16. We beat them in 2017, obviously, a game that I was at, by the way. Then we tied with them in 2018 in Cleveland to start the season off. Lost to them in that infamous Myles Garrett, Mason Rudolph game on a Thursday nighter in 2019. Lost to them in the regular season finale in 2020 in Cleveland. Beat them in Cleveland in 2021. And then every year since 2022, the Browns have beaten the Steelers in Cleveland. So yeah, before we used to beat the Browns in Cleveland like it was nobody's business. Now we can't beat them in Cleveland anymore. So that might be a challenging game right there too. And then we end the season off at home week 18 against the Baltimore Ravens. It still says date and time to be determined, but knowing our track record, I am going to predict that this is actually going to be on Saturday. It's going to be on Saturday. That's my prediction right there. Because think about it. 2023, we were in Baltimore for the regular season finale. That was a Saturday game. Last year, our regular season finale was also a Saturday game against the Bengals. And then even our second matchup with the Ravens in 2024 was in Baltimore, and that was on a Saturday too. So I'm gonna sit down here and predict that our second matchup with the Ravens at home will also be on a Saturday. Even though it says date and time to be determined, I'll even say Saturday at around 4:30. So there you have it. That is the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers schedule. Now, I said that I would not be doing wins and losses predictions, but I will say this. The number one game on this schedule that I am confident that we will win, Week 6 at home against the Browns. Like I said, we always play the Browns well in Pittsburgh. We usually beat them in Pittsburgh. We have owned them in Pittsburgh since the 70s, since the merger, basically. Okay? So if there's one game that I am confident that we will win, it is that game right there. Plus, it's after the bye week, after heavy travel, when we had just played the Vikings in Ireland. So, yeah, that's the one game that I'm confident that we'll win. The one game, like I said, that I think we are guaranteed to lose, it is Week 16 at the Lions. A lot of these other games are up in the air, but I mean, I could really see him going either way, but no matter how you slice and dice it, we are absolutely 100% losing to the Lions week 16. If I had to give a ceiling and floor, I'm saying right now, if the Steelers play all their cards right, offense actually finds a rhythm, they overachieve without George Pickens, they get a run game going, the offense actually finds a rhythm, Arthur Smith pulls his head from out of his ass, and the offense actually lives up to par for once, I believe this team can win somewhere between 10 to 12 games. That's the absolute ceiling right there, in my opinion. You know, barring they don't have yet again another late season collapse, even though if I had to predict where the late season collapse will be, it will probably be between weeks 13 through 18, because that is when we start to play really good teams again. Not as bad as last year when we had that stupid 3-game and 10-day stretch late in the season, but it's kind of watered down this year because weeks 13 through 18, we play the Bills, Ravens, Dolphins, Lions, Browns, and the Ravens again. Now, 2 of those teams made the playoffs last year. That was Buffalo and Baltimore. It was only those 2, okay? But the Dolphins, they were in the hunt for a while. Actually, only three of those teams made the playoffs last year, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Detroit. Miami was in the playoff hunt for a little bit, but they fell out. It was just that bad start they got off to. And then the Browns, they were obviously one of the worst teams in the NFL last year. So, yeah, kind of similar, only it's more spread out this time. We have actually time to rest and prepare, and we don't have to worry about cramming it in a short time span right there. So yeah, if I had to predict where the late season collapse will be, it'll probably be between weeks 13 through 18, okay? We play Buffalo, Baltimore, Miami, Detroit, Cleveland, and Baltimore again during that time span, okay? We play 3 playoff teams. We play 2 playoff teams from 3 playoff teams from last year in 4 games. That's my prediction. So, but yeah, like I said, ceiling 10 to 12 wins. That's assuming we do everything right, everything goes our way. Our floor, about 5 and 12. If there's a season for the Steelers to have more than 10 losses in a season since the 80s, it's this season right here. Because, you know, they did very little in the offseason to fix up the quarterback situation, just traded Pickens. Defense is still very suspect. Offensive line didn't change. They had a very underwhelming draft, in my opinion. So, and of course, we still got that clown on the sidelines as the head coach, okay? So, yeah, my ceiling is about 5 and my floor is about 5 and 12. Like I said, the Steelers have not had a season losing more than 10 games since 1988. But if there's a season to do that, it's this season right here. So, yeah, that is my schedule review for 2025 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me know what you think down below, and I will see you in the next one.